So today I plan to go and read through some one-star reviews from my favorite reads from 2022. And you would think that I would be okay hearing negative reviews of my favorite books because I tend to say a lot of negative things about other people's favorite books, but I feel like that is not the case. And I'm a little bit nervous about what people have to say about books that I absolutely love, but that's what we're gonna find out today. Before we get started though, I just wanted to say that I very much do respect other people's opinions. Just because a book really worked for me does not necessarily mean that it's going to work for everybody else. And if somebody has something negative to say, explaining why the book didn't work for them, I 100% respect that, even if I don't necessarily agree with that. What I don't respect is when people are mean about the book as to like, oh, if you enjoyed it, then you're not like, you're stupid if you liked it. Like, why would you like that? It absolutely sucks. Like, I don't like those type of reviews because I just think that it's being mean. Like, you can explain what didn't work for you, but you don't necessarily have to be like, oh, you're stupid if you liked this book. So it's going to be interesting to go through these reviews because I have no idea what I'm going to come across, but I just wanted to say that right now that I respect people's opinions up to a certain point. So I decided to start with Love Light Farms, and I came across this review that says the book that inspired this tweet. And then the tweet is, you ever read a romance novel that's so adorable and precious and the right amount of steamy, and you're 100% convinced you found a new favorite until the stupidest third act breakup happens and sucks out all of the enjoyment from your soul. Because hi, we should start a support group. So first of all, that is an amazing tweet because I would like to be a part of that support group. There are so many books that I have read where the third act conflict was so annoying and I really hated what happened that it really brought down my enjoyment for the actual book. And happens to be in this book specifically, I was not a fan of the third act conflict either, except I was enjoying the rest of the book so much that I let it slide. There are some times where I will let annoying third act conflict slide because of how much I loved the rest of the story, and I'll put on blinders for it. And that's definitely something that I did do for this book, so I 100% do understand where this person is coming from. I don't know if I would have given a 1-star review for a book that was amazing up until that last little bit, unless it was like much worse than what the actual third act conflict was for this book, but I see where you're coming from, so I respect it. I get why some might think this is a cute Christmas book, but for me, it was just annoying. The plot was complete crap. For example, the whole thing with the mysterious events at the farm when the guilty one was revealed, I was just so disappointed. And then the romantic parts didn't even make up for it. At the beginning of the romantic relationship, I was like, okay, now this has some potential, but at some point, the whole thing got boring and I started skipping pages. In addition, I'm convinced Stella has some serious problems with alcohol, and she was kind of dumb, which got on my nerves. I could give this a higher rating, but this was just useless, and I don't even feel bad for giving it a 1-star, so I'll leave it at that. Okay, so first of all, I don't read a lot of Christmas books because I usually don't end up enjoying them because they're always a little bit too like magical, a little bit too like sweet, hallmarky, whatever it is for me. And one thing why I really liked this book was because I felt like it was a little bit not as much like the other Christmas books I've read. Like it felt a little bit more normal, a little bit more like, I don't know, it was just cute and it worked for me for being a Christmas book. And that is why I ended up loving it as much as I did, because it was just better than I expected it to be. But when you said like, oh, it was, the plot was complete crap because of the whole like, mysterious events at the farm, like I was kind of expecting something like that in this book. Like I was expecting it to be a little bit like eye-rolly, a little bit to like whatever it is. Like it was what it was, and I was expecting it. So therefore I wasn't really disappointed by it because I saw something like that coming, and I honestly thought it was going to be a little bit like not even as interesting as it was. So that is something that I completely let slide, but I totally see how like, you wouldn't have loved that. So, respect over there. And then the beginning of the romantic relationship was okay, and then it had some potential, but at some point things got boring and I started skipping pages. So personally, I didn't feel that way, but I completely understand when like for some reason you just lose interest and it doesn't get as interesting for you. I personally was interested the whole time. So, a difference of opinion, that is okay. And then what else did you say? Stella has some serious problems with alcohol. Okay, I feel that she definitely did drink quite a lot in this book, but like, it doesn't bother me, so that's fine. And then, you could give it a higher rating, but it was just useless and I don't even feel bad about giving it a 1-star. So I'll leave it at that. You know what? That's fine. I respect why this book didn't work for you, and I'm happy that you weren't mean about it. I really do not understand the hype. It was painful to read. If I had to hear him call her Lala one more time, I was going to throw up. Okay, first of all, yes, I agree. Lala was the weirdest nickname in the world, and I just kept skipping over it. I'm now thinking like maybe I just was in a really good mood when I read this book, and therefore I just like let a lot of things slide because everything that people are complaining about, I understand why, it was something that annoyed you. But for some reason, like I just let it go because I was having such a good time with the rest of the book. But this is like sometimes nicknames really do get to me. Like when they call them like a weird nickname, sometimes it really makes me cringe and it ruins the book for me. But this time when he was calling her Lala, I just like, I don't know, my eyes just kept going over it so that it wouldn't bother me. So I get it. And then the last one I'll do for this is they were annoying, I'm sorry. That's fine. All right, so next up is Waking Olivia. Someone said, can't say this was the worst book I read this year, but it's close. Ouch. DNF at 21%. The girl in this is extremely unlikable. She goes out of her way to give everyone an attitude, even people who are nice to her. Every line of dialogue with the guy is an argument. There were no redeeming qualities to save this story. Plus, the narrator for the guy sounded like an old man. So the narrator for the guy sounded like an old man. Sounds like you were reading this via audio. So I do think that like listening to something versus like reading something can definitely change your experience with it. So I did physically read this book, so I can't say how you felt about the actual audio. But for what you said about how the H is extremely unlikable, like the girl's extremely unlikable, I understand where you're coming from. That was actually part of the book and part of the reason why I liked it. I like when not always the main girl is like, a happy-go-lucky, sunshiny person. Like, I personally am a grumpy person, and that is why I enjoy reading a lot of grumpy, sunshine sort of situations. And I like seeing sometimes when the girl is the one with the bad attitude, the girl is the one that is a little bit harder to like, and the guy will end up liking her anyway. And that was something that I liked about this book. I can see why it wouldn't work for everybody. So, I'll respect your opinion, but also like you didn't even read the entire thing to like, fully see like where it was going to go and if like, her attitude would change throughout the story, and then you would have enjoyed the progression of like, where she started from versus where she got. But like, whatever it is, what it is, if it wasn't working for you, I respect the fact that you decided to DNF it. And then also you said like every line of the dialogue with the guy is an argument, and that was something I like. I love banter and like arguments and things along those lines, so that worked for me. But again, it definitely wouldn't work for everybody. So I hear ya. Oh my God, don't get culty from Shein or Shane. I don't know how to say that thing name, but like that's that like crappy clothing company. That made me laugh, I'm not gonna lie. All right, so this one is a little bit interesting because it kind of counteracts what the other person said, but this review says this was an overload of unnecessary drama. Olivia was a fairly likable, tough-as-nails character with more issues than Vogue, though she began to annoy me closer towards the end. So it's funny because you're saying that she's likable, another person found her extremely unlikable. So it really like depends on the perspective that you have, and I find that quite interesting to see like what some people like the fact that like she's complex and has a specific attitude. Some people like it just didn't work for her, and therefore they thought her to be extremely unlikable. So just interesting to see the opposites in people. But either way, Will, well, I didn't really like Will. In fact, I grew to actively dislike him. His constant, I like her, no, I can't be with her, fuck, I want her, lol, nah, there are too many complications, God, I can't stop thinking about her, look, my dick is Nope. Gotta stay away from her. Who the fuck are those guys around her? Oh my God, she just keeps on going. So like basically at the end, she's like, make up your fucking mind, you asshole. Him and all the drama. Olivia messed up and childhood nightmares, and Will's job and money problems and girlfriend and resentment towards his brother really tested my patience. I couldn't wait for this to be over. All right, so funny thing is that even though this was one of my favorite reads from 2022, I actually did not give it a 5 stars in the moment that I read it. And only if you had seen my review or you remember when I actually posted about it originally, would you have known that. But after the fact, I actually like it settled with me, and I'm like, you know what? I had a great time with this book, and it kept sticking in my mind, and that is why it ended up being a favorite read for mine. But one of the things that I actually complained about with the book when I had read it at all the way back when was that I didn't like how much back and forth he was being. Like there was that whole forbidden aspect of the fact that he was unavailable for a little bit, and also he was the coach of the student, and he really didn't want to go there even though he wanted to go there. And that was something that did annoy me. I thought in my head, and I even pretty sure wrote it in my review, that it was a little bit too much for me, all of the back and forth. So I 100% understand where you're coming from with that, and I can see why that would ruin the book for you. Didn't really ruin it much for me, but I do completely see where you're coming from. And then all of the rest of it with the drama and the childhood and the nightmares and Will's job and money problems and girlfriend and resentment towards his brother. So I that was drama that didn't really bother me. I kind of found all the childhood and nightmare sort of situation to be what made the book unique, and that was why I was actually really enjoying it, because it was just something very different for me and everything along those lines. And then the whole thing with his girlfriend and stuff, that was something that I was actually very aware of when I went into the book. So I went into it with the right mindset of this is not going to bother me. I'm just going to have to get through it and enjoy it for what it was. So I actually specifically had a little bit of I was prepared for that sort of stuff. So therefore it didn't really get to me. And then the whole thing with the brother, yeah, that was something I didn't really care for, but also it didn't really ruin my enjoyment specifically. So I 100% see where you're coming from with this book. And I feel if I had read it at a different time, I possibly could have felt that way, but I guess I picked it up at the right time. So really worked for me, even though it didn't work for you. And that is okay. I couldn't have been more bored had I been watching rice boil. This wasn't for me. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on. Next up, we have Forbidden by Carl Sorensen. So someone said, slow and boring, no chemistry, too much push and pull. I don't think this needed 300 plus pages. I found that the side characters were way too meddlesome. The two leads had the chemistry of a rock. The story dragged way too long, and frankly, it didn't. Ending wasn't much of a payoff. That was not written correctly, but I understood what you were saying. I understand the nature of Aiden's hesitance, but Isabel should have just cut her losses after the first round of whiplash. Then again, Isabel seemed reeked desperation frustration throughout the whole book. As much as she said she didn't want to replace Beth, her actions proved otherwise. In my opinion, the story had the potential to be something more, but ultimately it fell way flat. I am so sad that, you felt that way, because first of all, let's go through one thing at a time. All right, I don't think this needed to be 300 plus pages. That is not a very long book. Like, this is actually quite a short book. So I feel like that is not a lot of pages. What do you want it to be? A novella? Whatever. Anyway, the side characters were way too meddlesome. This is the fourth book in a companion series that not only is a series on its own, but also has like started from previous series. So there are a lot of characters that people have been loving for a very long time, and therefore they were in this book. And even though this was the first book that I read in the series, I didn't even feel that way. But I do understand why someone might have seen it that way, and I do respect that, because there are some times where I'll read companion series and I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. Why are they so involved in the story? Like, I'm completely confused. It should be able to be read as a standalone. So if you felt that way, I respect that you felt that way, even though this was the first book that I read by Carl Sorensen. So I didn't even like see that whatsoever. But you know what? We'll have to agree to disagree somewhat, whatever. Well, let's move on. Anyway, the two leads had the chemistry of a rock. I completely disagree. I really liked everything that was going on between the two of them, but whatever, not gonna work for everyone, and that's fine. We gotta stay positive here so that we don't get upset. And then the story dragged way too long, and frankly, it didn't end with much of a payoff. Okay, so the thing is that this was a slow burn, and I feel like sometimes people just don't enjoy the fact that it takes a while to get there. So I will respect your opinion in the fact that it took 70% or so for the main couple to get together, and that was actually one reason why I liked it, because I'm a really big fan of slow burns, so that worked for me. But I can see why it wouldn't work for everybody else, so you know what, it's fine. And then Aiden was hesitant. The whole thing with the fact that he wasn't necessarily ready to move on, but then Isabel was there, so he did have a bit of back and forth. That was something that very much didn't bother me, because that's kind of stuff that I like to see when you're dealing with a widowed single dad and everything like that. So all that whole situation worked for me. I can see why it would bug other people, but you know what, it didn't bug me, so that is why it was one of my favorite books, and you didn't enjoy it, and that is okay. Let's move on. I can't understand how a story gets a 4.5 stars. There is no story. It's all about a 25-year-old virgin girl trainer fantasies. There's no plot, no big deal, and nothing that really happens in the 80% of the book. So horribly boring. So the thing is that I think that sometimes people just don't enjoy slow burns and they don't respect it for what it is. So we will agree to disagree. Let's move on. Honestly, it wasn't great. Recycled storyline. There's something about this author and dragging out her plot. So again, it was a slow burn, and I enjoy when not necessarily a plot is dragged out, but when it does take a while to get there. And I feel like some people that just wouldn't work for, and that is okay. So I'm going to assume that you didn't really like this because of how slow of a burn it was and how long it took to get to where it's going. But I happen to think what the other person said, this was 300 something pages, and in my eyes, that is on the shorter side of books. So for the fact that it was a slow burn in such a short amount of time, I actually really liked the dynamic of how all of that worked out. I guess it didn't work for everybody else, but it did work for me. So that was fine. And then for recycled storyline, I feel like it just depends on what you've read in the past. A lot of books that I read feel like recycled storylines because it's just the same romance with the same plot, the same tropes over and over and over again. And I really enjoy this one, but you know what? It's okay. We'll agree to disagree. Oh my God. Okay. This review says decent. This was overall a good story, but the sex scenes were too few and literally glossed over with little to no detail. I've never read such vanilla stuff before. No more for me. You must be a dark romance reader, and that is okay. But I personally just enjoy the book for what it is. If there's a lot of sex scenes, if there isn't a lot of sex scenes, this was a very not steamy scene, sort of book. I'm pretty sure I had rated it 1.75 at the time because there was maybe one scene and it wasn't even very detailed, but I don't let that bother me. If it's a phase of black, it's not going to ruin the book for me because I didn't get to see the action. Sometimes I enjoy the action, sometimes there's too much action, sometimes there might be too little action, but that's not a reason to give it a 1 freaking star. Oh my God, again, DNF at 73%. There's only so much slow burn I can take before I stop caring. 73%, they were probably about to get together because I'm pretty sure they got together right around there. So you just didn't wait long enough. And you know what? I get it. Slow burns don't work for everybody. That was one of the reasons why I absolutely loved it. All right, I've had enough of people being mean about the fact that it was a slow burn, so we're gonna move on. And next up, we have the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. So I found a review that says, regretting reading this. There, I got it out of my chest. Wasted my time. How can I unread this? Whoever said that this was like watching Criminal Minds, you are absolutely incorrect. You are absolutely incorrect because it totally is like Criminal Minds. I mean, obviously everybody has the right to their own opinion, but I am one of those people who definitely keep saying oh, if you're a fan of Criminal Minds and you want a romance in a book, read this book. And I mean, you know what? I don't see where you're coming from when you say that I'm completely incorrect, but whatever. It's fine. And then also, you wasted your time reading it. I'm sorry that it didn't work for you. I absolutely loved it. And a lot of the population agrees with me. So I think that you're in the minority here. Never trusting book talk again. What the fuck did I just read, and why is everyone hyping up this series? So I don't really trust book talk too much. Like, I take all of their reviews with a grain of salt because I don't think that you can really judge a book by like one really amazing quote or anything like that. And that tends to be the reason why some books get pushed on book talk. And it's fair, but like that's why I don't really put too much stock in book talk recs. But I happen to think that this was one of those like exceptions where it's like book talk hyped it up and it actually was very good. I'm sorry it did not work out for you. This series is the definition of Wattpad reading. I managed to read 2 out of the 5, but life is too short to be punishing myself for reading something that is not enjoyable. There was no urge to want to keep reading. There is no suspense, just Jake trying to catch the boogeyman and Lana hiding from Jake, to be honest. The writing itself reminds me of something you would find from a 16-year-old English story homework submission. Reminder to self, not all TikTok books are worth the investment. So reminder to everybody that not all TikTok books are worth the investment. I completely agree with that. TikTok, like I just said, tends to hype up some books that don't end up being that amazing, and that is fine. The thing is that I have been seeing around lately that people are like, bashing books for being Wattpad reading, and I'm not one of those people who ever had even downloaded Wattpad or used to read on Wattpad or anything like that. But what I know about Wattpad based off of like my almost nothing knowledge is that it's about people posting books, like just regular people post like books and like whatever they want to write on there, and then like people read them and it's like all free or something like that. I don't really know the details about it, but what I'm assuming is that Wattpad writing basically means like unedited and like self-published kind of vibe writing where it might not be, like fully formed and 100% perfect. But I don't see why that is like an insult. Like there are so many people who have lately been insulting like book talk books for being like Wattpad. Like you can say like the writing wasn't amazing, it should have gone through another round of editing, something like that. It's all about the way that you word things. And I really am not a fan of when people like bash things saying it's a Wattpad type of read. Like it's just something that bothers me. And I wasn't even someone who had read Wattpad in the past, but I do understand where you're coming from. And I know that you're really just meaning that like the writing didn't work for you. So whatever, it's fine. I didn't really feel that way when I read it, but whatever, agree to disagree. And then, you only read 2 out of the 5. So it's funny because a lot of people tend to think of this book as like 5 books in one, where it's really like 5 novellas in one. But I like to think of it as like, one story. So really you just DNF'd it like, I don't know, 2/5 of the way through. I don't really know how to do math, but either way, you didn't get like too far in it. And I think that the story in itself did get better as you kept going. So I think that like, you just really didn't get there yet. And maybe you were thinking of it as like full books. So it felt like you had to like read so much to actually like get to the main point. But if you really think of it as just like, a 500-page book or so, it does take a while for, the story to progress. And I think that it definitely is one that got a lot better as he kept going. So maybe you just didn't get there yet. And that's okay. If it wasn't working for you, you can DNF it. That is totally fine. Don't waste your time if you're not enjoying something. But also, like, you didn't even finish the story. I don't think I said this at the beginning of the video, but I'm not going to go through every single book that was on my favorite reads of 2022. So I'm just going to do one more book. And I decided we're going to do my number 1 read from last year, which was Finding 13. So first up, someone said, fuck book talk for lying because this was awful. So look, I get it. Not every book talk book is going to work for you, but happens to be this one really worked for me. Cliffhanger. I stayed up finishing the book because I wanted to know how it ended, and it did end. Unfortunately, the story did not. I really hate cliffhangers. So thing is that I feel bad that you actually didn't know that this was like, a book with a cliffhanger. I feel like every time that I talk about this book, I specifically point out that you gotta read both of them. Like the first book ends up on a cliffhanger. You're gonna want to have the second one on hand because you're gonna have to, like, you're gonna feel the need to keep going. So I do understand how that could be something that was so annoying. But if you made it to the end of the book, why would you give it a 1-star review just because it was a cliffhanger? Unless like you were really pissed by the fact that like, you didn't get your ending because maybe you weren't enjoying it or something like that. I don't really know because you didn't give me any extra detail. But my point is that it's always a good idea to do a little bit of research before you start a book, just to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into so that you don't end up getting to a book that is not a standalone, even if you were thinking it was a standalone. So, possibly do your due diligence, next time. But I understand, why that pissed you off. DNF at 27%. I kept thinking that the book has a 4.47 stars, so it probably gets better, but sorry, it did not, and I chose to have some self-respect. So, you know what? That is a completely respectable thing. I mean, you did say it a little bit like rudely, but I'll let it slide because you know what? Not every book is going to work for everybody, and if you're 27% in and you're just not feeling it, then yeah, why would you want to keep going? I get it, but I will say that, sometimes people do connect to the book much closer, and therefore, like, they would enjoy it as they keep going. This was one of those books where I did get attached to the characters right away, and I kind of just like, first chapter I was already like heavily invested and I wanted to keep going from the start. So if you were 27% in and you weren't feeling the same feelings that I was feeling, I can see why you wouldn't want to keep going because it would end up feeling like quite a drag. Don't read this. It's so bad I can't bother to write a bad review. DNF at 10%. I've seen this book all over TikTok and no one mentioned this is a romance between a 15 and 17-year-old. Personally, I get the ick reading any book with underage characters if the book is considered adult romance. Also, the cover is so misleading. Like, you're going to put naked people on the cover for a book about a 15-year-old FMC and a 17-year-old MMC. So the thing is that I don't know what cover you're looking at, because on my cover and the cover that I see around all the time, they're not naked at all. Like, it's just like an actual person of, on the cover. And I think that is totally okay. Not everybody likes models on their cover, but they're not naked. And I don't think that the cover is misleading, but I will give you, the benefit of the doubt, saying that maybe you are looking at a different version of the cover. And then, I understand where you're coming from. And then on top of that, the whole thing about they're underage, but it's an adult romance. So happens to be, I have slowly come to terms with agreeing with you on there. Right when I was getting into reading, I started reading a lot of new adult and adult high school books where, it's just a little bit over dramatized. It's a little bit more spicy than what your average YA high school setting sort of book. And I stopped enjoying that because of, the whole vibe of how it felt a little bit unrealistic and everything like that. But happens to be in this book, I think that all of the adult content is because of the exterior factors and everything else that's going on in their life. I don't really think that everything that they're dealing with necessarily is over dramatized in the sense where it's an adult romance, but they're really in high school sort of thing. So I'm going to agree to disagree with you on that sense, because I do think that this is one of those books where you can make that exception of, even if you don't like reading about people in high school and then it's the new adult vibe and everything like that, it's one of those books that I personally think is exception worthy. So that is all I'll say about that. But you know what? I'll respect your opinion, even though you only made it 10% into the book. All right, this is going to be the last one that I'm going to do. Someone said taking a shot every time Johnny says the word lad, something about training or his cock to get absolutely paralytic. I don't know what that word means, to get through his chapters. Paralytic? Yeah, I still don't know what that word means. Anyway, taking a shot every time Shannon falls over, cries, or says something about how small she is to get absolutely off my face to get through her chapters. Time for book 2. Okay, I didn't completely understand your review because I don't think that it was worded correctly, but maybe you actually were taking a shot for every time Johnny said lad, and therefore I understand how you were typing a little bit wrong. But it seems like you were enjoying it enough to keep going with book 2. So you know what? I've got nothing really to say about that. So I feel like this ended up going a lot better than I expected it to. I honestly had a feeling that I would be in a really bad mood by the end of this video because people were just gonna be really mean to some of my favorite books from last year, but I feel like I'm kind of fine. Even though not everybody was necessarily extremely nice about it, I understood where the majority of these people were coming from, and that's why everybody has a different opinion. Sometimes the reasons why a book would work for me would be the exact reasons why it didn't work for you, and yada, 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 yada. So either way, this was fun. So if you did enjoy watching this video, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm even down to do this again. I could do it with another theme. Maybe I would do it for some of my favorite books from Ariana Zapata, read some things that people had to say bad about that, or maybe some Sarah J. Maas books. I don't know. I feel like this was fun though, and I'd be down to do it again. So let me know down below if you wanted me to, and also if you have any ideas for what topic I should do next. But either way, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed, because I would really appreciate it. But either way, I just really appreciate you watching my videos, so thank you so much for that. And until next time, enjoy reading.